Hello, welcome to this short presentation about the agencies of socialisation and social control. So, agencies of socialisation and social control. We've got that key word there, agencies of socialisation and social control. Okay, so socialisation, you obviously need to be aware of what socialisation means, the transmission of norms and values to individuals in society so that they internalise norms and values, which becomes part of how they see themselves and their identity. And also means that they absorb the collective values into their individual conscience, so they become shared values with others, values shared with others. So we've got 6 main agencies of socialisation. So we've got the family, we've got peer groups, we've got the media, we've got religion, we've got education and workplace. And so with the family, several key points to make there. In terms of role models, you could talk about how children may imitate parents, for example with gender norms. You could talk about the way in which family gives us particularistic values. Okay, if you want to find out more about this, there's information about this. This comes under Durkheim and Parsons' functionalists' views on family life. And the difference: primary socialisation, family life; secondary socialisation, education. Particularistic values in the family. That means that you're valued as an individual based on your individual skills and differences, and so you get specific attention from your family because of your individuality. You might get specific, table manners, specific norms as well. You've also got sanctions. So the family might use informal control. Sanctions like ridicule or ostracization. People get restricted freedom from their family. Grounded. Peer groups. Peer groups can act as an agency of socialisation and social control through pressure. So peer pressure. Peer pressure is based on the fear of exclusion. Okay, so people fear exclusion by the peer group, and fear of kind of ostracization. Again, ridicule, ostracize. The peer group controls its members. Obviously, you've got imitation, you've got status within that as well. So the idea of status in the peer group, there's usually certain leaders in the peer group who are able to manipulate and have more power than others. They've given more prestige or importance than others in the peer group. So the leader of a gang, and they also have power, so they can influence others to do things. The media. Okay, the media pass on norms and values in a range of influences through TV, film, newspapers, and social media. Obviously, the key thing here with media is representations and portrayals. So social groups are represented and portrayed in different ways by the media, and this reinforces stereotypes and identities and group images and so on. So representations and portrayals in the media are important. We need to look at the perspectives on all of these, but I'm just giving some key concepts. Religion. Okay, religion can be seen as passing on moral codes, such as modesty, humility, forgiveness, chastity, compassion, empathy. Moral codes. Religion also has emphasises status, because there are members of the religious institution who have different levels of status, like priests. And religion is important in reinforcing a range of norms in terms of class, age, gender, ethnicity. Say that for any of these, and we need to look into that. Religion, in terms of status of male priests rather than female priests, all of those issues are important. Religion gives meaning, whereas science gives explanation as to why. Religion searches for why in terms of wider meanings and purpose. That's one of the arguments from the defenders of religion. Religion often defends a more conservative view of the world. So in other words, religion is focused on good behaviour and bad behaviour as being clearly defined. It's based on maintaining institutions, often like the family, based on a particular model of family life. The idea that different groups of society should keep their status and position as it stands, rather than changing society. Conservative thinkers want to keep things the same. So the religious view of various things like family life and sexuality and gender is fairly traditional. Okay, education. So we've got two types of curriculum. So education has the formal curriculum. Okay, so the formal curriculum is passing on particular subject content for each subject, like maths, English and science, history. So the formal curriculum is the knowledge that students are expected to learn in the classroom based on the content that's set by exam boards and the government. Particular subjects like history are expected to focus on particular areas of history. And so the formal curriculum is the knowledge based on what we're expected to learn in the classroom from subject content, and obviously outside of the lesson based on what the exam is focused on. But the formal curriculum can be seen in different ways. It could be seen as providing knowledge, which leads to skills, which leads to readiness for wider social life, to integrate into society, to be successful in a meritocracy. We have another view which says that education in the formal curriculum, the formal curriculum is biased because it's focused on a limited view of the world which benefits particular groups. So you could look at social class, ethnicity, gender. So you can see the formal curriculum as not neutral and not for training, which is the functionalist view, and not for passing on cultural values, which is the functionalist view, but for passing on particular limited values in terms of class, which the Marxists would emphasise, in terms of gender, which the feminists would emphasise, in terms of ethnicity, which race critics would emphasise. So you could say that the formal curriculum is class prejudiced, that it's sexist, patriarchal, and that it's ethnocentric. It's focused on one particular group. Okay, so an example of that, bell hooks. As a black feminist, bell hooks argue that we live in a patriarchal, racist Western society in the UK and in America. And so she argues that literature in the formal curriculum is biased in favour of white, Western, rather than African, Caribbean or other ethnic minority groups. And so we can say that there's a selective focus on white British identity in the formal curriculum, which tends to exclude other identities. For example, we learn about white British history, like the Tudors, rather than black history, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Obviously, we know that there's Black History Week or month, but that could be seen as the exception that proves the rule. In other words, because there's so little of that, it shows that most of it is focused on white identities and culture. Okay, so you've got the formal curriculum. The hidden curriculum is different. So whereas the formal curriculum is openly stated and explicitly expected in terms of knowledge for an exam, the hidden curriculum is hidden, so that means that it's informal, it's not openly stated, it may be part of the everyday behaviour and the everyday organisation of the institution. So it could involve the way in which the school is organised with a male leader but female teachers. Could involve the way in which students are put in different sets based on ability, which could relate to social class, based on social class, appearance, dialect and language rather than ability. But with ability as the kind of label to hide the reality of class prejudice. That was studied by Ball, who looked at banding and streaming in education, which reinforces class stereotypes and tends to disadvantage the poorer students and advantages the wealthier students. Bowles and Gintis, Marxists, look at how the hidden curriculum, the everyday way in which education is divided up, the way in which students are expected to wear uniform, obey the teacher's authority, it all reinforces a limited capitalist ideology, so that people are trained to be obedient rather than think for themselves. The workplace. Okay, the workplace, last of all, can be seen to have two types of culture, like and socialisation, like religion, education. So we've got the formal culture, which is training in workplace. And the key word I'd use here is ethos. Okay, the ethos of an organisation or corporation or workplace is the culture of the organisation that the employers and the organisation itself, especially its leaders, wish to promote. So it's the idea that we promote equality and we promote innovation and we promote giving autonomy and ownership to our staff so that they have freedom to work in the way they want. So that might be the ethos behind an organisation, which is its surface image really, rather than behind. It's kind of it's the foreground of what they're trying to present to the world. We are nice and we are fair and we are hardworking. So the formal training might encourage racism is unlawful. You should not be racist in the workplace and so on. So you have training to reinforce this, like equality and diversity. But secondly, you have the informal culture in the workplace and informal socialisation. So informal is the kind of more hidden or less open types of socialisation. So that could include the idea of canteen culture. And there's someone called Skolnick who looks at this. A canteen culture is the way in which workers let off steam and employees release tension and stress to cope with a difficult, challenging job. And that might involve racist, sexist, class prejudiced, ageist language, jokes, and discussion, especially in a behind-the-scenes environment where you're not dealing with clients or customers. So, for example, the police, according to studies of people like Skolnick, the police exchange racist and sexist jokes to let off steam because of the challenges of being a police officer. So canteen culture, so informal socialisation. There's obviously a crossover because some organisations have a more informal culture, like the police force and the fire service have a more informal culture because there's more time when employees are spending time together behind the scenes. So there's more difficulty in concealing an identity. So for example, it's more difficult to conceal an identity as homosexual if you are working in the police or the fire service. Some organisations have got more formalised culture where there's less time with employees together without clients being there. Perhaps teachers during the term time might be an example of this, because during term time they're often more in their class. Obviously during the holidays they're not. It's useful to know that we're increasingly shifting to more informalised culture and a less formal culture. So society is becoming increasingly open. There's a view that we live in a more meritocratic, more equal, opportunities-based society. There's a huge debate over this, but you could talk about the fact that we've shifted to a more open society in which management through negotiation rather than management through command affects the way in which people manage each other's behaviour, from parents and children to employers and employees. There's more focus on management through negotiation rather than management through command. That's a general shift in society, a large key social shift, which is related to social shifts in terms of groups and institutions' importance and part of people's lives. Political shifts in terms of power and influence, economic shifts and cultural shifts. Okay, so we've got